selling this book on Amazon, the Breatharian Institute, for quite a nice sum. So it says 17 years ago, at the age of 28, Wiley Brooks developed a diet that made him so healthy and happy and alert that he has maintained it ever since. So, very interesting. We're going to get into it. We're going to go ahead and get into our new reading today. So thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us once again for some of today's Wisdom of the Ages from some modern sages. This is Jerome Shaw back with the Pranic pages. Let's begin. Do you believe you are responsible for your health and longevity? Do you believe that until you purify the body of all poisons, it will be impossible to have enough clarity of mind to know how you really feel? Do you believe that the decisions that you make in your lifetime will determine the duration of your life? Do you believe that as your blood becomes purer, it will give you freedom from all discord? Do you believe the fear of world destruction will end when the body is pure? Do you believe that junk foods of our Western society have literally deteriorated the quality of life and shortened the lifespan of human beings? Do you believe that all human beings will live with a higher health consciousness as soon as they realize that they are what they eat? Do you believe that Westerners consume 10 times more food per day than is necessary? Do you believe the enormous interest in health books indicates that people are taking more of an interest in the understanding of their own health than they did 10 years ago? Do you believe that if you are satisfied with everything, then you are going nowhere? Do you believe if you are seeking to fulfill a desire, you will find a way to attain it? Do you believe fast food promotions are out to make dollars and not to promote health? Do you believe it is up to the consumer to discover what additives there are in consumer foods? Do you believe it is up to the consumer to discover how consumer foods are processed and what dangers this processing represents? Do you believe that growth cannot go upward if one is thinking downward? Do you believe eating pork and other heavy meats directly affects your own creativity and robs you of the experience of calm alertness? Do you believe eating lighter foods brings a harmonious balance to the body, and the lighter the body, the more energy it has? Do you believe that because of drug consumption, drugs are ruling our society to a point that thousands of bodies are walking around with most of the life gone from them? Do you believe that to take aspirin continually to combat the warning systems of your body is an indication that you lack the understanding that involves the willpower to treat your body to wholesome eating, drinking, and living? That the common cold that you have to live with every early spring or winter is a direct result of the foods and liquids that you consume? That the foods and the liquids that are the most difficult for you to give up are generally the ones that contain the most poisons? That alcohol, smoking, sugar, medicine, and other preservatives have a definite effect on the longevity of your life? That we must stop being mere collectors of nutritional information and instead begin to live this nutritional information? That the revelation in the mind and spirit of man can be reawakened when people develop direction, and especially when that direction comes from that quiet, still voice from within? That destiny of mankind is being threatened today, and a healthy, aware mankind can correct it? that we can enter a period of time soon that together, an aware mankind can provide leadership and stimulation on this planet, which will reflect a love and understanding for each other, in which no man will need to feel the threat of war, hunger, loneliness, or even death. These are but a few of the current ideals recognized in the philosophy of Breatharianism. After you read through them very thoroughly and find yourself answering yes to these statements, you are on your way to discovering that you are ready to experience what these authors, Wiley Brooks and Nancy Foss, have experienced through many years of seeking for a higher health consciousness. The information found in this book has been written in a time of many evils and misinformation that may have a direct result on where this universe is going. To find the perfect world of God may be a miracle, but it is also an exact scientific application within our lives. We are moving at a fast pace, and it is time that we become independent from all mistakes and so-called sins. We would like for you to consider returning and focusing on loving yourself and your neighbor, forgiving yourself and your neighbor, resisting all misinformation about health, and come to the realization that the most important thing is to get in tune and harmony with our perfect universal creation. So, Breatharianism, breathe and live forever. Good health, says Brooks, is the most precious thing and the only thing, I think, that is worth owning. Chapter 1. The philosophy of Breatharianism. Breatharianism is the philosophy that teaches that when man reaches his perfect state of health and natural state of being, he will be in perfect harmony with his Creator and require no foods, water, or sleep. And in this state of harmony, the body's aging process will slow down tremendously. There has been a great deal of controversy as to whether the basis of this philosophy is even possible. Food is not life. Food in itself is the end result of life, the effect of life. Life is the cause, and food is the effect of that cause. Let me assure you that you cannot get life from something that is not a source of life itself. Wiley Brooks has been experimenting with this philosophy most of his life, sometimes subconsciously, and at other times through very deliberate and conscious experiences. Life holds many different crises for us during the course of our travels here on earth. He has known more than once what it is to accept failure, and also what it is to experience a dream come true. We humans are presently at a time when most of us are experiencing life not knowing what we want, but nonetheless certain this is not it. You ever felt like that? Like, whatever it is that you want in life, this cannot be it. Man, in his many forms, has always found a way of adapting to his environment. And it is this adaptability that will someday bring us into the golden age, a period of time which will be filled with love, in which no man will feel the threat of war or the agony of loneliness ever again. It will be a time when in all ways, all of us will live love. People will be able to experience the golden age only when they begin to raise their consciousness to a state of perfection and their body to a state of perfect health. Part of our direction in life comes from the astrological sign under which we are born. Take a guess at which astrological sign you think is mine. We are influenced by the sign under which we are born. We are influenced by the power of the cosmos and the laws of the universe. His own life has been an example of this principle. Wiley was born March 23, 1936, in Memphis, Tennessee, a circumstance which has had an effect on the path his life has taken. Having been born under the sign of Aries explains how, as a small boy, living in a small community of Memphis, he could feel a strong sense of universal freedom and a strong desire to go beyond all levels of influence to understand the universal question, why am I here on this earth? Aries is a true sign of seeking oneself. It symbolizes the realization within oneself that one is a separate entity apart from the rest of humanity. Aries is the beginning of self-awareness, which comes from the inner consciousness, and this awareness is what allows one to become more in unity with one's creator. He feels very strongly that as he became more conscious of his life potential, his awareness of all humanity expanded. He grew up in a large family of 9 children, experiencing a normal home environment. Nonetheless, he could feel a restlessness from within. This sensation, in retrospect, was not surprising, considering that Aries represents the individual ego constantly seeking the light of life, trying to prove its existence apart from the masses of humanity. But in the beginning, he was just another normal little boy enjoying his life of pop and potato chips. His entire family was healthy by normal standards. He did start having severe headaches in his early teens, which led to the realization that he needed eyeglasses in order to drive a car, and he obtained his first pair. All of his brothers and sisters spent much of their time at the movies consuming candy bars, soda pop, and various other junk food. At that point in his life, he was not particularly health conscious, except that he was aware that his physical condition was acceptable enough to allow him to participate in strenuous sports activities, such as football and basketball. However, by the time he was to graduate from high school in 1954, wow, my mom was born in 1953, Jesus. He had acquired a love of electronics and had become a bookworm. It was about this time that he began to think about his mortality. And he wondered if in pursuing a career, he would be around long enough that people do begin the aging process, but at the same time want to look younger and live longer. He wondered how this desire of man got so mixed up and led to death when people around him were looking for ways to stay young and live forever. To answer this question, he began to visit hospitals only to witness that the effect of diseases and an unhealthy state of mind could have on people. So he began to visit hospitals witnessing what the effect of disease and unhealthy states of mind could have upon other people. It is his conviction that nothing happens by chance, nor do we always understand what is occurring within ourselves, since our view of life is so limited. And thus, we need to get inside ourselves to discover that there exists a cause for every effect. He knew when he entered the Air Force after graduating from high school that he was in an environment of discipline, that as long as he behaved according to a certain norm and went along with the prescribed flow of self-discipline, the effect would be to cause no disturbing vibrations. During this period, he realized that the past and the future are only illusions, and that they in turn become the present, which is what there is and all that there is. To be subject to pain or diseases of death distracts us from the reality that for all beings on this plane and in others exist God or Buddha or our soul or our alter ego, whatever term one cares to use. And it is this entity which is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. So all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-present. There is the knowledge that can transcend us back to the state of man's original existence, that of Breatharianism. Another curiosity to him was the fact that the people observed were all eating the same things as he, since in the Air Force, food is highly regulated. What really bothered him was that these individuals were aging and at various times becoming sick and suffering from a variety of emotional disturbances. He could remember from his childhood his mother having quoted to him some ideas from the Bible, which during his questioning period seemed to make a lot of sense. In Genesis 1 verses 26, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the earth, over the cattle, and over all the earth." It occurred to him that he was eating steaks, chicken, fish, and other meats. Mankind indeed had dominion over these animals, and yet took that power to kill these living beings with the idea in mind of love for all creatures. It seemed to him that the dominion of love is not expressed by the cruelty of mass breeding of billions of animals simply to kill them, eat their flesh, clothe ourselves in luxurious skins and furs, take their feathers to create a variety of articles to wear or to hang on the wall, or to use their fat and bones for thousands of household items. Our society has designated times of the year in which we say it is all right to hunt and kill these beasts by any means, in spite of cruelty or lack of love. All of this has been justified by the fact that it keeps us alive, and our medicine cabinets full of prescribed drugs. He concluded there must be another way in which man can sustain himself other than deriving wealth and comfort from the terrible exploitation of other living souls. It made sense to him that to eat fruit would be a very simple solution to the problem. Referring again to the Bible from Genesis verse 29, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of the tree with its seed. To you it shall be for food." In order to rid himself of the fact that the consumption of food is the destruction of other living souls, he referred to this biblical teaching, which led him to the next step in his life. We must realize that we are not simply physical beings, needing to discover once again the ideal food for our physical bodies, but that we are also spirit and soul. We are very strongly influenced by some form of intelligence common to all forms of life. In other words, if we could remove the smokescreen of everyday life and stop acting as if we were on stage, as we all do in our everyday lives, we would be able to discover that our true health is expressed in the desires, and desires are unhealthy ones. That our true health is expressed in the thoughts and desires of our hearts. If these thoughts and desires are unhealthy ones, then our internal organisms are simultaneously affected. Combine all this with a nation of junk food addicts, and we are left with the dilemma of not being able to experience strength, health, or healing. Thus, the aging process begins. At the afore-described point of his life, he began eating only fruits and experimenting with fasting for various lengths of time. And thus, at the age of 28, he was determined to search for the answers that could give him better health and allow him to sleep less, so as to pursue other interests in his life in addition to working, eating, and sleeping. Very interesting. When I was 28 years old, that was when I took a trip from Texas to California, and that's when all of this started. When I was 28 years old, wow. That's when all of this started. He should like to stress here that anyone committed to a major change in his or her lifestyle must do so at a step at a time. The cleansing and purifying of the blood does not occur overnight. It has been proven that what is one man's meat is another man's poison. Because of its stresses and tensions, our society is above all one of contrast and contradictions. Most people regard these symptoms as part of nature, which is both their strength and weakness. We are living in a period of great unbalance, with long periods of stagnation and disharmony. People will starve to death without an intelligent plan to regain strength. The nature of most of us is a strong emotion or nostalgia, which means a desire for what has never been, or at least not in the manner in which it was anticipated. This is where the power of adaptability proves its existence. Fasting, though beneficial to some people, could mean instant death to others. If an alcoholic were to suddenly stop all intake of alcohol, his body would react violently, and such action might even possibly kill him. I remember watching a documentary about fentanyl, and there was a girl on the street, and she had been hooked on fentanyl for years, and she had overdosed many times. I think at least around 10 times she overdosed. And the interviewers of the documentary, they asked her, why do you keep doing this drug? Why do you keep taking this? When you know that you could die. She said the withdrawal symptoms. She said, I never want to feel that again. She said the withdrawal from fentanyl was so unbearable. She'd rather endure the possibility of death than go through the pain of detox. The body has the ability to adjust itself to almost any substance, no matter how poisonous. The Grit of October 14, 1951, tells of a Bill Haste who has proven this theory to the maximum. It states, he is full of snake poison himself. For when he first began handling the reptiles, he set out to make himself immune to their bites. The Serpentarium owner inoculated himself with larger and larger doses of snake poison, and now believes he is the only man in the world genuinely immune to all types of snake venom. He has been bitten by 9 cobras, and many other times by rattlers, moccasins, corals, and other kinds of killers. Wow, imagine that. Your body adapting to poison from snakes. It's crazy. The habits we have acquired throughout our own lives must be overcome so that we can return to our original state, that of Breatharianism. Let me just pause right there. That is amazing. I just want to stop right there real quick. He was bitten by 9 cobras, rattlers, different moccasins, corals, and other types of killers. What? That reminds me of, what is his name? Bear Grylls and Steve Irwin and all these people that used to, they would be bitten by these crazy insects and reptiles, and your body adapts to the poison, to the venom. coursing through your veins, coursing through the blood, and you're still alive. And it finds a way to adapt. That right there is a testament. Like, what more proof do you need? Your body is amazing. 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 It is necessary for each individual to know why it is important to him or her. For him, it was so as not to grow old. Until you purify your body of all its accumulated poisons, it will feel impossible to have the clarity of mind to know how you really feel. The alcoholic drinks to forget his problems. The drug addict gets high to find his heaven on earth. The eater eats for their pleasure. But the stronger the smokescreen of desires, the farther the reach for perfection and oneness with the universe or the Creator. Fasting is the most powerful of all tools for cleansing the body. When the body is sick with a cold, for example, it immediately does not want food. The sick person stops eating and just takes liquids. And within a few days, the body has released all of its toxins and is able to return to what is considered normal health by present standards. I always remember chicken noodle soup. That's what they always put us on, my parents. Whenever I had a cold or whenever I was sneezing or coughing or all this stuff, they would be like, okay, maybe you need some chicken noodle soup, right? I would go on more liquidy foods until it was time to go back to solid food. But I never thought like I could live on liquid, right? I never thought that was possible. But for a certain time, I was living on liquids, well, more liquids, just to recover my body. But then I would go straight back into the rotisseries and the soul food, the comfort food, the all-you-can-eat buffets, and the trays and trays and trays. It's crazy. We live and we learn. However, it is best to start fasting before any disorders develop. That's a Chinese proverb. Yes, Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. Do what is difficult while it is still easy. Accomplish the great task while it is still small. Right? That's a really good point. Do what is difficult while it is easy. Right? That the best cure is prevention. Before you get to the phase where now you have to do it. Like, do it before you need to do it. What you miss in the pleasures of eating, you will make up for in the strong sense of well-being. I remember an Italian nun told me the same about celibacy. I was like, you don't miss, you don't miss all of that? She's like, nah. She said, people don't realize what they're missing. I was like, really? She's like, yeah. I said, okay. As he has related, at the age of 28, he began to feel distress at the thought of losing his hair and some signs of arthritis. The fear of getting old, in addition to seeing himself a success in business, yet still unhappy, led him to the search for a loving and peaceful and contented way of life. It seemed to him at this time that the more successful a person is in making money, collecting skills and possessions, growing in status, acquiring knowledge and degrees, power and prestige, the farther away he or she gets from being loving and peaceful with himself or herself. Breatharianism, meaning man in his perfect state of health, leads to the achievement of that goal. He got started not by stopping eating, but rather by the desire to become healthy and to get his body into the best possible physical condition. He discovered that food had a lot to do with his body being in its imperfect state. He soon found that as the body gets healthier, the requirement for food becomes less and less and less. Few people seem to realize that eating is not natural, but only a habit. We are told from childhood that we must eat 3 times a day in order to grow big and strong like Daddy. Thus, we get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, telling ourselves that we are hungry. Even if we had no appetite, we should not leave any food on our plates because of all the starving children in India. Yet all the eating he had done to that point had merely resulted in the slow, gradual destruction of his body. Now, has anybody else been told that? Has anybody else been sold that? I remember so many years I grew up and my parents, eat everything on that plate. You don't leave this table until every morsel. I remember I was with a Jamaican family and they definitely cracked the whip on it. It was like, you do not leave this table until you've licked the plate clean. Clean. And I remember when I was talking to a gentleman from Nigeria, and I was like, brother, that perception of all those starving children in Africa, he was like, man, people don't know what they're talking about. Back where I'm from, there's whole civilization, there's so many things going on, people have no idea. But even living in Africa, he had a perception of America that was also skewed in that perception. So just as Americans in the West were thinking that all these people in the East were suffering and starving, and these children in Africa, these children in India, all these people, and the parents are, you better eat all of that, right? There's starving children in Africa, right? I got told that a lot. He was like, he thought that if he went to America, that he would be living large because of McDonald's. He said he saw an advertisement for McDonald's on TV when he was young, and he thought that it was a 5-star restaurant. He thought McDonald's was 5 stars, top of the line, the cream of the crop, the best out there. And he said he couldn't wait to get to America to have a double cheeseburger. Can you believe that? He couldn't wait. And when he got over here and he saw the perception that people in America had about McDonald's, he realized he had been living a lie. That for the majority of his life, he idolized something. Wow. Just interesting the perceptions that we can play into. The next objection to overcome was if he stopped eating, would he starve to death? It did not take long to realize that this was a very valid concern. And the reason is that people try to stop eating without the knowledge and training necessary to accomplish this properly. To change one's habits immediately can be very harmful. A body which has been poisoned since childhood has already begun a downward path, both physically and spiritually, since the health of your body directly affects your spiritual consciousness. Now this kind of hits home, me being raised on, Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Lucky Charms, and, when I looked at the ingredients of all the cereals and stuff that I used to eat every morning, just the cereals, not even talking about the ramen noodles and the cups of noodles and all the spices and condiments and ketchup, but just let alone the cereals. I looked at the ingredients and there was something called trisodium phosphate. You can find this in paint thinner. It's in paint thinner. It's an ingredient in paint, and they feed it to kids. It's on the shelves. It stocks the shelves. Fruit Loops, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious, right? Fruity Loops, follow your nose wherever it goes. Cookie Crisp, right? Crazy good, right? All the slogans, right? All the programming. So being poisoned since childhood. Most people use only 10% of their brain power. We are capable of far greater mental achievements than what we normally project. Since we are not used to using our mental capacities totally, we should be careful in expanding our knowledge too quickly. A good example of what too much strain on the brain could do is sometimes seen when a person hears of a loved one being killed. That person is not expecting to hear that news, and as a result of the shock from such a total change, dies. It is very important to introduce new habits gradually. To grow into the philosophy of Breatharianism takes considerable time, strength, and careful research. Once you have decided to make Breatharianism your way of life, be sure to take your development one step at a time, and to learn and let your inner intuition be your guide. The intakes of toxins, such as tobacco and alcohol, has effects on the body. We know this. Some worse than others. It seems the lighter the food, the better the body functions. The heavier the food, the lower its vibrations, causing the body to increase its general output of energy. A good example of raising the body's vibrations and thus its energy was shown when Wiley did a demonstration of lifting over 1,100 pounds, so 1,100 pounds of weight on the ABC national television program. His strength has increased over a period of 17 years while experimenting with many diets that improved the overall condition of his body. The return to Breatharianism is a step-by-step process. We did not stray from this way of life overnight. We have evolved through 5 stages since that time. In the beginning was Breatharianism. Man was in perfect balance with his creator. The second stage was Liquidarian, when man began to take in the universal drink of life. So I'm guessing water. This was followed by Fruitarianism, when man began to partake of the fruit of the land. Then came Vegetarianism, as man became tiller of the soil. The last was Carnivorism, as man became the ruler of the kingdom and all the plant and animal life thereon. In order for us to return to Breatharianism, we must first realize the great number of diseases that are in existence today. All of these diseases attack the cells of the body. These cells are what keeps the body running in perfect harmony. Reminds me of Osmosis Jones. You ever seen that movie? Chris Rock, Osmosis Jones, classic. It is therefore of the utmost importance to keep the body free from all disease. Constipation is one of the widespread diseases in America today. Whoo-wee. Boy, did I have... That was my life. Thousands of other Americans suffer from such disorders as stomach ulcers. I probably had that too. All the spicy stuff I was eating. Bowel troubles, had that. Appendectomies, I don't know about that. Appendicitis, appendectomies. With all of these diseases and disorders attacking our system, it should be a startling indication of the disharmonies of the cells of our bodies. Many people carry 20 to 40 pounds of toxic materials in their alimentary tracts, another indication of the overload on our systems. That's crazy. 20 to 40 pounds of toxic materials that we don't even know that we're carrying, right? Just carrying all that burden. It reminds me of a book I read a book by Roxane Gay. The book is called Hunger, a memoir of my body. And she talks about having a BMI, a body mass index of over 50. She weighed 571 pounds. Yeah, 570 something pounds. That was the point that she reached. Like, that was the achievement. We call it an achievement because how in the world can someone have that amount of mass and still be alive? Why don't we question the miracle of the body, right? Why do we look at it, obesity? Why don't we look at it like, that's a miracle, that's amazing. You're alive? That's amazing. I'm fascinated by the body's ability to adapt to any condition. Like, the inflammation, it just gets inflamed and it just encases the disease, it encases the everything, it just wraps around it and it just does its best to keep you alive. At all costs. It's trying to do everything it can to keep you alive. And we take it for granted. I took it for granted. We were created to be perfect, but with the continual deterioration of our bodies, if we don't take control, we will be headed for an early grave as we continue to poison ourselves. Breatharianism does offer a new and better way of life. It guarantees a long, healthy, and vigorous life. There's no question in anyone's mind which path of life is superior. Heindel, a great scientist, had a very exact view on old age. The process was, in his viewpoint, a very clear progression of deterioration. He explains the aging process as follows. There is a gradual increase in density and firmness of bones, tendons, cartilages, ligaments, tissues, membranes, and the coverings, and even the very substance of the stomach, liver, lungs, and other organs. The joints become rigid and dry. They begin to crack and grate when they are moved. Because the synovial fluid, which oils and softens them, is diminished in quantity and rendered too thick and gluttonous to serve that purpose. The heart, the brain, and the entire muscular system, spinal cord, nerves, eyes, etc., partake of the same consolidating process, growing more and more rigid. Millions upon millions of the minute capillary vessels, which ramify and spread like the branches of a tree, throughout the entire body, gradually choke up and change into solid fiber, no longer pervious to blood. The larger blood vessels, both arteries and veins, indurate, lose their elasticity, grow smaller, and become incapable of carrying the required amount of blood. The fluids of the blood thicken and become putrid, loaded with earth matter. The skin withers and grows wrinkled and dry. Hair falls out for lack of oil. Teeth decay and drop out for lack of gelatin. The motor nerves begin to dry up and the body's movements become weakened and slow. The senses fail, the circulation of the blood is retarded. It stagnates and congeals in the vessels. More and more, the body loses its former powers. Once elastic, healthy, alert, pliable, active, and sensitive, it changes and becomes rigid, slow, and insensible. Finally, it dies of old age. As Heindel states, the body tries to fight old age, but we work against it by continuing to supply it with all the unnecessary things we think it needs. And that reminds me of a verse in the Tao where it said the way of life or the way of living is supple and flexible, like supple, youthful, the way of life, but the way of death is rigid and stiff. So being like bamboo, being able to bend with the wind, but you don't snap. But if you're too rigid and stiff, you'll break. As Heindel states, the body tries to fight old age, but we work against it by continuing to supply it with all the unnecessary things we think that it needs. If the body is healthy, the efficiency increases. Thus, it is a step-by-step process to return to Breatharianism. When the body reaches its most perfect state, it neither requires sleep nor water. However, when one is not in a perfect environment, such as in a city it is necessary to continue with both. It is necessary to rest the body when its energy is low. It is possible to completely rejuvenate the body when one reaches the state of a practicing breatharian. Our bodies have the ability to adapt to a specific lifestyle, be it good or bad. For example, vegetarians find the smell of meat disgusting. Well, probably not all. I don't know if all vegetarians. If they have been vegetarians for a long period of time, to eat meat would make them sick. Additionally, when one takes a puff of a cigarette for the first time, he becomes violently ill. Now, I will definitely agree that when I got kicked out of my parents' house, I flunked 10th grade. They kicked me out of the house and they sent me to a boarding school in Calhoun, Tennessee. So I went to a boarding school when I flunked 10th grade and I had to repeat a grade. But at this boarding school, it was called Advent Home. It no longer exists. You can look it up on Google. I think it has like one star. It's gone now. But I was in a boarding school. And for 11 months, they had us on they had me on a vegan diet. Some kids were there for years. I remember a kid named Randolph. He was there for 3 years. And the parents were just paying thousands of dollars to keep him there every month. And it was like a correctional facility. It was like a reform school, for bad little kids. It wasn't co-ed, so it was only boys. But I was there, and that was the first time I got introduced to veganism. So I was actually forced into veganism. And let me tell you, the minute I got out, the day I left, we went straight to the buffet. Straight to the buffet. The very same day. So while I was there, we were having all vegan, right? No meat, no cheese. Vegan tofu on vegan turkey on Thanksgiving. We had vegan tofu, vegan sweet and sour tofu. That was the one that I hated the most. Vegan eggs, vegan this, vegan that. Tofu this, tofu that, tofu this. And then when I got out, I went straight to Ryan's, or it was either Ryan's or Golden Corral, whatever those buffets are in the South. You know them. And let me tell you, I was in the restroom, I was in the bathroom all night long. My body was screaming. It was like, Jerome, what have you done? What have you done? That's what my body was telling me when I went straight from 11 months living vegan, straight back into eating, all types of animal flesh and just pigging out, like eating everything I could get my hands on. My body was like, are you crazy? Are you insane? So yeah, I made friends with the restroom that night. The toilet was my friend. However, as a beginning smoker continues to induce the smoke into his body, he will soon be able to withstand more and more of the poison. These are examples of how we unknowingly prevent the body from reaching its most perfect state. Unless we begin to take more notice of what we put into our bodies, we will continue in a downward path of health consciousness. Drinking liquids of all kinds, and I just saw a question. Let me answer that real quick. I usually don't on these readings, but I'll go ahead and answer this. Someone's asking if I'm still vegan. Yes. Yes. Since, how many years now? I guess since I was 29. So some years now. Still vegan. Don't plan on going beyond that point. Even if I do eat solids, I won't go past vegan. That's just for my own reasons. Drinking liquids of all kinds can also lead your health on a downward direction. Distilled water is the safest liquid to drink. It does not harm the body it does less harm to the body than any other liquid. Interesting, he said it does less harm. Orange juice is a good drink to take as a form of medicine for the body. It is possible to perform the hardest kind of work, both mentally as well as physically, using only oranges for your diet. When people get sick, it seems like a natural drink to consume. The reason is that it provides all the nourishment the body requires, and in addition, neutralizes the acid in the system. This theory will be discussed in more detail in the later chapters. People tend to carry fears and doubts with them whenever embarking on a new path. Anyone having hesitation to read on for fear of losing something very dear to himself should read this verse and try to assimilate it into his life. The popular esoteric author Richard Bach states, "Your only obligation in any lifetime is to be true to yourself. Being true to anyone else is not only impossible, but the mark of a fake messiah. Also, love, and you will become wise. Become wise, and it will suit you to love. One does not truly love unless one becomes better, and to become better is to get wise." One of the fears most people entertain, of course, is whether or not this lifestyle will alter their physical appearance. Weight loss can only be healthy since the lighter the body, the more energy it has. When Wiley first began practicing Breatharianism, he weighed 160 pounds. As he experimented with a detoxification diet, he went down to 130 pounds, where he began to stabilize. I stabilized around 155. The body will begin to equalize itself as the system gets rid of the poisons, and you will reach an equilibrium point at which you will remain for most of the time. To give you a personal example, Wiley Brooks used to jog every day with his secretary in a park in New York. She had just finished a 15-day fast and found that one day after the job, she had gained 3 pounds. Her body at that point was equalizing itself. For him, when he rests at night, he usually finds that the next day he will go up 2 or 3 pounds. However, if he expends an exceptional amount of energy, he will drop by 2 or 3 pounds. There is a woman, Terest Numenate, who since 1926 has consumed only 1 teaspoon of water and Holy Communion daily. Her sleep is a 20-minute meditation. Her favorite work is growing flowers for the church. In physical activity, she never seems tired. She is psychic and has done astral travel. Her foodless living has been attested to by scientific committees. She is stigmatic, during which period she loses up to 6 pounds. She gains the weight back after an evening rest. To begin to learn the secrets of Breatharianism is to open the way to a perfect understanding about oneself. Sri Aurobindo states it very clearly. He says, "If you do not take food, that already frees you from this unconsciousness that you have no longer to assimilate and transform within you. That liberated energy in you. Then, as there is an instance in the being to make up for the energy spent, if you do not gather it from food, i.e. from below, you make automatically an effort to draw it from the universal vital energy which is free around you. And if you can assimilate that energy, assimilate it directly, then there is no limit to your energy." How tall am I? 6'3". Wiley Brooks is not trying to talk people into starving themselves to death. The idea of Breatharianism is to at least have the opportunity to go without eating in times of catastrophe and survive it healthy and without fear of dying. One cannot follow this philosophy of not eating without it affecting our desires, motives, lifelong habits, and everyday appetites, or without the knowledge and understanding found within. The Apostle Paul spoke, "It is God working in you to do His will and to do His good pleasure." In order for you to begin the journey to Breatharianism, you must begin by cleansing the body. This entire process begins with a detoxification diet. Eventually, while on the detoxification diet, you will begin to go 1 month or perhaps 2 months without any food, which will be a step on the way to Breatharianism. Now, before I even knew about any of this, that was how I started. Back in 2019, I just went 1 month without solid food. And I felt so good after that. I went 2 more months without solid food. And then it was like, okay, I know nothing. I was like, okay, teach me, right? Like, what else don't I know? Because clearly, for the last 28 years of my life, me thinking that I lacked energy, clarity, purpose, and all the above, right? All this stuff came flooding into my life when I let go of eating. Like when I let go of food, it was like, where have you been? Where have you been all my life? Where? Oh, there you are. Oh, okay, right? It was ridiculous. I was like, what? Has it been this simple this whole time? It was blowing my mind. I was like, it cannot be that easy. Have I been doing something unconsciously for decades that I didn't even have to do? You mean I had a choice this whole time? I had choice? I could have chosen. You mean I was choosing this? You mean what? Like, I didn't even know I had an option. We are all different. We must learn to listen to our own bodies as to how long we should stay on this diet. As we become purer, we shall find that our bodies can adjust, and very soon will begin to tell us just which fruits we need and how much of them, until we reach a point of no return, where the body will no longer need anything but the breath of life. You must bear in mind that we are reversing a process of life, going from food-eating beings back to the original state of Breatharianism. Eli Tom would also often tell us at retreats, he would be like, you're going from an earth animal to an air animal. It's an interesting thought, he would say going from a homo sapien to a homo genius. Like, you're a homo genius. you're opening up more mental faculties. From homo sapien to a homo genius. When the original Breatharian ate the first food, it affected the nerves in a negative manner, just as the person who takes his first try at smoking damages his nervous system. Now, I never had cigarettes, but I remember when we were kids, I used to hang around, I used to be in this neighborhood. I'm an only child, so I would run around, ride my bike around the neighborhood. And I remember I went to these folks' house. How did I remember this? I remember I went to these folks' house and I was playing around with the kids. And we were kids, we were all kids. But it was like the little rascals, the little rascals. We were just little rascals. And I remember their parents had like stepped out at the time. They were gone and they just left us to our own devices, like just run around and play. And these kids were like rich. These were rich kids I was playing with at the time outside in the suburbs. And they had like way more stuff than I ever had. They had a giant pool in the backyard and all this stuff and just luxurious and lavish and just everything top of the line. And these kids, I guess their parents smoked cigarettes because they took pieces of paper, like just pieces of regular rolled up paper, and they were lighting up the paper and they were smoking the paper. Like just regular pieces of paper, nothing, no nicotine, nothing. And we were smoking paper. And we were I remember just coughing, like, I don't want that, like they were like, come here, take it, take a hit or something. It was like little pieces of paper. And it was, looking back on it, I was like, what were we doing? but we were imitating someone that was above us. Like they were imitating their parents and they thought it was cool, you know? So they were just little rascals. That memory just came back to me for some reason. The things we do. You must bear in mind that we are reversing a process, right? Going back from food eating. If a person continues to smoke, the poisons of the tobacco begin to dull the senses and lower the vitality. And by this process, the body adjusts itself to the use of tobacco to the point that it actually begins to crave it. The Breatharian began to deviate from the true path of life with the habit of eating. The longer he continued to do so, the more he began to crave food. Now, don't we realize that? Like, the more we eat, the more we want. Like, the more you have, the more you crave. But the less you have, the less you need. It's like a paradox. Everything's backwards. Everything's backwards. Therefore, in the beginning stages of the diet, it is only natural that the energy level will lower until the body is free of the toxins. It's probably like, it has to get worse before it gets better. Like the ball has to hit the ground before it bounces. There's a lot of people like, why do I feel sick whenever I fast? I don't like fasting. I feel sick every time. Well, that's detox, right? That's what we mean. At that point, once the body is totally cleansed, it is impossible to have any illnesses. In fact, as the energy level improves, not even sleep is necessary, as Wiley has found to be the case in his own experience. Now, I found that in the past to be my experience as well. This was when I was going longer periods of dry. I'm still on liquids now, but when I was going periods with nothing, I was like a vampire. Like I was up. I remember I was in a studio apartment just pacing back and forth. And I was reading, and I think I was reading an Anne Rice novel. I might have been reading an Anne Rice novel. I was walking back and forth, and it was all night long. I would be up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and then I'd fall asleep maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock, and I would wake up at 6 o'clock. And I would look at my watch, I would look at my phone, I'd be like, there is no way. There's no way. I look outside, the sun hadn't even risen. I was like, there is no way I'm up right now. And my body was like, yeah, we're good. Jerome, we're good. The battery's charged. What's on the menu today? What we got planned? What we gonna do with all this energy? I said, there is no way. I just went to sleep. 2 hours. I got up, fully charged. I said, there is no way. It was blowing my mind. I said, I never felt like this. It is very interesting phenomena when people find out you are doing something a little off the beaten track. They begin to watch you suspiciously to see if you might die in front of them or do something strange during the course of the day. In his own experiences, he had a boss who became extremely worried about him when he heard about his strange diet. However, he had no doubts himself about his condition since he was jogging 15 miles a day while working 18 hours a day. Yeah, during that time I was walking 10 miles a day. Since what he was doing was totally unique, especially since he was very thin and did not look like a healthy person to his way of thinking. But in reality, Wiley's boss was the one that continued to get colds, headaches, and long periods of drowsiness. One of the things we must expect if we try to make the change to ideal food or breath of life is that as long as we are flowing into the law of love and not ignoring others around us and treating others as ourselves, the learning experiences must be overcome and we will return to our natural state. Sometimes that is hard to see when particular social circumstances make you feel like others around you are ill at ease. For example, when Wiley is out with friends, they suddenly become guilty about eating too much or not the right thing. Being in the presence of a practicing breatharian leads to the manifestation of insecure thoughts of wanting to eat. But if we can learn to not let these things become our lessons in life, and if we continue down our own paths, we will not be weakened by the fact that we do not eat. On the contrary, we will reach peaks in our lives that we did not know we were capable of. I remember, hearing one of my mentors saying the same. Like, they were thinking to themselves, they were like, I don't really think what I'm doing, not eating, I don't think this is actually supernatural. And then they thought about it. They said, wait a minute. Actually, no, let me correct that. Yeah, it is supernatural. It is supernatural. I'm over here looking at people eating, and I'm just sitting there looking at them. And they're falling all over the place, they're drowsy, they gotta go take a nap, and I'm running all over the place. Energy for days, It is supernatural. I was like, oh. But of course, in certain places, in certain spaces, like they say in the cities, the different powers in, I don't know if it's yogic philosophy or different Indian philosophy, they call them cities or perfections, these powers that we can master. Food freedom is a minor city. It's minor. Like, in the grand scheme of things, is all that the human is capable of, the things that we can do with this vessel. Not eating food is very small on the totem pole. Like, it's not even that big of a deal. But it seems that way because everyone else is doing it, right? So it seems large, but when you think about what we can actually do, it's actually small. It's not that big of a deal. So it's very interesting just to have that perspective. In the Gospel according to Thomas, let they who seek not cease seeking until they find. And when they find, they will not be troubled. They will marvel and will reign over the all. With this biblical teaching in mind, for Wiley, it was not difficult to stop eating. The fear of growing old haunted him. He felt that growing old was the heaviest sacrifice he might have to make along the way of his existence. His vanity was worth dying for, especially if it meant that other ways led to the process of aging, bringing with it all the so-called old age diseases, not to mention the slow loss of memory or lack of will to live. That is why it is so important to know why you are searching. A lot of people think that eating is their only pleasure in life. But how do they know there is not more if they do not try? That was probably one of my pleasures. On my totem pole, the highest pleasures in my life years ago were video games and food. Those were probably my highest two. We live a life of action and a life of contemplation. We are not to sacrifice either to the other. In other words, right action cannot happen without right knowing. Likewise, neither can our knowing be called right if it does not follow with a right action. For example, if Wiley could have continued to eat and yet not age, then he would have continued to do so. Little did he know he could end up with so much more. Is it hard to not eat? If we are to live a life of total commitment with total knowledge and total giving, that should not be a hard question to answer. Since our evolution away from the perfect breatharian, man's mechanisms have had many alternatives. From the beginning on Earth, we were made physically with all the structures that we could possibly need under ordinary circumstances. Having teeth, for example, in the beginning did nothing more than aid us in breathing. However, as our bodies have adapted to our new way of life, which is one of eating, the teeth became the means of breaking down the foods, which in turn stimulated the saliva glands, which dilute the toxic substances in order that they may be swallowed and do the least amount of damage once they reach the stomach. One thing is certain, the quality and the amount of food you put in your body has a direct effect on your energy level and mental state of being. or subconsciousness. The Bible tells us that our bodies were made perfect and complete. But man, in his search for growth and stimulation, has gone far beyond the true path of life. In the Reader's Digest, Judith Churchill wrote, "When you overeat one day, you are hungrier the next. Huge meals stretch your stomach and throw your appetite out of proportion. Conversely, the less you eat, the less you want. After you become used to smaller food intake, you may wonder how you have previously eaten so much." Yes, I definitely wonder how I was packing it down. And I was packing it down, let me tell you. Let me tell you, I was eating food for families. How many times after a large meal, in which we are left feeling extremely uncomfortable, have we said to ourselves, "That will be the last time I do that," so many times. And yet, along comes the next smorgasbord or the next festive holiday, and we are reaching into the medicine cabinet for something to hide the uncomfortable feeling that we have. There is no feeling of exuberance, or you do not feel like running a marathon. So why do we insist that to eat makes us happy? To feel at one with oneself is greater joy than any outside stimulation possible. Before we can remove disease, death, accident, poverty, or injustice off of this earth, we must first remove the impurities from our blood within each one of us. Then we can have a world shining forth in perfect glory. We cannot love others unless we love ourselves first. How can we end condemnation, have no judgment, no punishment, and freedom for all if we cannot even control our bodies? Until our consciousness can accept that what we really are, there is no hope for a perfect society. Are we entering an era of practicing Breatharianism? The question, or the answer to this question, is a very simple matter of fact. Would an alcoholic return to drinking alcohol once he had broken the habit? Or likewise, would a drug addict return to that one thing that was destroying his life once he had broken the habit? Wiley can assure you, it is an exhilarating feeling to know that you have control over your own life. Think what it would be like to have no sick days from work, or to never have a hangover. Feeling good can be such a natural high that you will never want to feel any of those insecure symptoms again. Once all the poisonous toxins are out of the body, then the skin can become the true breath of life and perform its normal function, that of bringing pure air in and out of the body. That was another sensation that was mind-blowing to me. Like the sensation of my skin actually breathing. It felt like the air was like water and I was breathing through my skin. Like every pore of my skin was drinking the atmosphere. It's crazy. I felt like one of them X-Men, like those mutants on X-Men, like Wolverine and, Jean Grey and Professor X, Charles Xavier, and Kitty Pryde and Beast and all these people with mutations. They call them mutations in the X-Men. I felt like a mutant. I was like, what is happening? What is this? I was just looking at my body completely differently. I was like, it can definitely function at levels that we don't know about. At that point of perfection in the body, there would be no practicing Breatharians returning to their old ways of life. You must create your own path. It is your inner self that you will answer to and follow. It is absolutely vital to know this inner self so well that you will learn to trust its every desire. A cleansed body is the perfect condition for the process of self-understanding to begin. When you can read the signals that your body is giving you, you are well on your way to practicing Breatharianism. One thing is very clear: all the answers are found within. Until we can tap that center of intelligence, there will be many misleading paths. Breatharianism is only one way to raise our consciousness. We must all search for our own direction in life. Then there will be peace on earth and goodwill toward men. Now I like that because, it's kind of like they say, there's way more than one path up a mountain, right? There's way more than one path up a mountain. There's many, many, many paths. So even for what he calls, practicing Breatharianism, there's so many people that have come into a more pranic state or more pranic awareness, not just through breath work, not just through meditation, not just through Qigong, but so many avenues, so many, right? And they were able to see the same view, the same horizon from a different vantage point. They rose from a completely different path. So that's why comparing your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 10 or chapter 20 usually doesn't get us so far. We end up frustrating ourselves when we think that we should be further along, but it's only through comparison, comparing our journey. So thank you so much for listening, y'all. We'll stop right there. We'll pause right there. And we'll come back to this. We'll read more next time. But once again, this book has been a book called Breatharianism, Breathe and Live Forever. The book is by Wiley Brooks and Nancy Foss. You can take a screenshot. You can check that out. And yeah, just for fun, check this out on Amazon. See how much it's going for right now, just for fun. I always like to see how much it's going for at the moment. So much love, y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Share the message with someone who needs to hear it. Keep the grateful, thankful spirit. I trust that the rest of your life is the best of your life. And for all things pranic living, check out the website that we have for you. It's called patreon.com/pranicpath. And it has tons of books, over 20 books at the moment and counting. For people who register through the second tier there, tons of videos and audios for your viewing and listening pleasure. And much love, it is always a treasure. Take care till next time. We'll see you soon. Keep shining and stay in tune.